Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Pies Presser. We've got some hypotheticals to go through to talk about replacing Reef McKinnis after the unfortunate ACL that he endured very early on in that game against Footscray. Very unfortunate. Feels like that game was almost a lifetime ago already. And unfortunately, we're going to have to wait a little bit longer to see some Pies footy because we have the bye and then we come up against our arch nemesis in the Carlton Blue Baggers. So, look, footy has a way in teasing us. Sometimes you have an overload of it, but right now we are going to have a shortage of Collingwood content, I think, or at least the game. We'll try to keep some live streams going throughout the course of the next week or so, but let's talk about Reef McKinnis. So, horrible situation for him personally, business-wise, in the world of AFL and his contract. He's in his last year. At the back end of last season and the off-season, we weren't really sure until we made some moves in. It was really late, perhaps just before delisted free agency or just after. Reef was granted another year extension on his existing contract. Now, we weren't sure what we were going to get from Reef. He was nearly a 2-goal a game forward last year. And then, I suppose they were probably trying to figure out what the list would look like with acquisitions through other means, draft, free agency, and whatnot. They end up deciding to keep him and they throw him down back right from the get-go. Once the preseason started, it was Reef McKinnis to the back line. Let's see if we can pull some strings and make it work. Many times you'll see in AFL, you'll see many players switch from forward to back to forward. Leon Davis, Jeremy Howe, Chris Tarrant's done it. Darcy Moore's done it. So you try and exhaust all options, all avenues with players who are talented. And Reef McKinnis was our prized first-round draft pick way back when in, I believe it would have been either 2020 or 2021, late first-rounder. So because we've struggled with our first-round picks, I think there would have definitely been an extra emphasis on trying to get right a first-round pick and delisting another first-round pick. I say another first-round pick. We haven't had a bunch of them in the last decade or so, but to delist him, it wouldn't have looked good. Would have they done it if they needed to? Sure, but I feel like there was still some areas that they wanted to test with Reef, and the backline was one. There was some it was skeptical. People questioned it, including myself. And by no means do I think he was going to be a mainstay in the backline. I think he was still finding his feet at training. He was doing well in the game. I mean, can you say he had much of a chance to impact it in the way we were playing? Port Adelaide was pretty much a defender's paradise. If you're Darcy Moore, Reef McKinnis, and Jeremy Howe, and then the game against Footscray, he's out in the first 5 minutes with the ACL. So we didn't get to see a lot of Reef McKinnis in the back line. It was a really small sample size. What we do know is, judging by what Craig McRae said in that presser after the game, he said Reef is a part of our future, to paraphrase him. And for me, I think that's almost enough for me to hope that Reef McKinnis gets another year extension. I think they did that with Harvey throughout his ACL recovery, but to be fair, Harvey was showing a lot more than what Reef was. Reef's the potential to become a lock in the back line he's a little bit further away than what Harvey Harrison was, and becoming a full-time winger for the long term for the Pies. What's going for Reef and what's working for him and what will help him get that contract extension to help him get through his rehab is his age, is the potential, and what we saw and what we liked in the preseason with Reef McKinnis as a defender. So I think that's what's going to happen. Unfortunately, we're going to have to wait another 12 months to see Reef flex his stuff in the back line and prove to us and prove to himself whether he is a defender, a high quality defender in the AFL that can do a job. And it brings many issues to the to the forefront. Unfortunately, the immediate issue that we are dealt with right now is we don't really have anyone outside of Charlie Dean and Billy Frampton. So we're already without forwards moving back. I don't think that's going to happen. I could be wrong, but I don't think that's going to happen right now. And until I hear otherwise and see otherwise, and the club hints at that, I'm not going to go down that path of the Mychecks or McStays and Membry's going back. I just don't know if they would want to pull the trigger on that with Charlie Dean and Billy Frampton waiting in line for an opportunity this year. So what do you guys think? Do you prefer a Charlie Dean, a Billy Frampton? What I might do is I might actually get the first poll up tonight. As I go into this conversation, I want you guys to tell me, would you prefer Billy Frampton or Charlie Dean? Bear with me. Okay, here. Poll. Who will replace Reef? We have Billy Frampton, or old mate Charlie Dean. And start poll. Okay. So while you guys are voting for that, I will get into what I think might be the case. So looking at, the first thing you probably want to look at is form in the VFL, which we'll get to. But I just want to talk to our fixture, our next 4 games. After the bye, we have Carlton, we have Sydney, we have Brisbane and Essendon. All 3 of those 4 sides don't really have premier key forwards. I'm talking about Sydney, I'm talking about Brisbane and Essendon. So the blessing there is whether it's Charlie Dean or whether it's Billy Frampton, they both have an opportunity to work their way into against sides that if we are defending well as a team, we won't be put under immense pressure in the back line. Carlton is another conversation. Now, we know they're not playing well when it comes to their delivery inside 50, which plays to the strengths of our defenders. So you could make the case that Frampton seems like the obvious option, especially because the most upcoming game is Carlton, and he matches up very well against Harry Mackay and had some really good moments against him early last year in that first game. I can't remember if he featured in the second game, though, so I'll have to follow that up. But we know what Billy Frampton brings. He brings effort, and that's a non-negotiable. He battles hard, and he prides himself on trying to win as many contests as possible. The other side of the coin is Charlie Dean, who could also try and find some rhythm against the other fewer sides in Brisbane, Sydney, Essendon. So it depends what Fly wants to go with here. Does he want to go with horses for courses and go Billy Frampton, or does he want to go absolute talent and go for a Charlie Dean? So we'll look into the VFL performance yesterday. I watched the full game on the watch along, so I kept a close eye on the likes of Charlie Dean and Billy Frampton. Charlie Dean was pretty sound defensively. He had 18 touches, 7 intercept possessions, and 7 marks. A few of those were intercept marks. He's actually quite comfortable with the ball in hand. He was quick with his hands in the back line. He stood up strong in the air, intercepting the ball. And I feel like we haven't seen it much, but we know it's there. And that is Charlie's point of difference in this conversation is his kicking ability, his ability to rebound the ball, his comfort, his laconic nature with the ball gives us solace going forward outside or from our back line. Billy Frampton was up and down last night. His stats would definitely tell you that he had a really good game stats-wise. He had 18 touches. He had 9 intercept possessions. But playing at VFL level, it was interesting to see these players actually get a lot of ball in hand. At AFL level, Charlie Dean and Billy Frampton are getting 10 touches max. Maybe Charlie Dean can get more, but Billy Frampton doesn't get a bunch of possessions when he's playing in the AFL side. So it's good to see and find out a little bit more what they're like when they are given the keys to disposing the ball in their back line. Like I said, Charlie was quite sound, but Billy Frampton, there was a number of unforced turnovers by foot. And the argument there right away is Billy Frampton's not going to have that pressure put upon him when he's in the AFL side, because you got the likes of Dan Houston, because you got the likes of Josh Dacos and everyone else in between. Throw in Braden Maynard and Jeremy Howe. So it's a bit of a non-issue, but at the very least, it was an observation to see these guys with more footy in their hands. Yeah, shaky at times in the air was Billy Frampton. He had a few soft drops inside our D50, which fed the small forwards in the Sydney Swans, and turned the ball over in our back half, which I've already mentioned. And he just gives me a level of anxiety with and without the ball. The only thing I will say about Frampton's performance yesterday was he was really strong. He was really impressive in certain contests, but it's just not consistent enough. And if we're seeing these issues at VFL level and we've seen it at AFL level, I just don't know how we work our way around that. He's just a bit of a clumsy guy. I don't know what to say any more than that. It's not a good hand to pick out of when you've only got two players truly to select from, unless we go shorter. And I just don't think that's going to be viable. We did, to be fair, thinking about it, we did okay without Reef McKinnis on the field. The only person who really killed us was Sam Darcy. So we know with Fly, he's quite unpredictable with the way he selects sides. So it's just sprung to me that maybe we don't even play either of them. Like, we were playing against Aaron Norton and Sam Darcy. Darcy Moore took Sam Darcy. Why can't Jeremy Howe? I know Jeremy Howe's on a one-on-one player. We're giving up a bit of size if it was just Jeremy Howe and Darcy as the mains, and then Brazzy helping out as well. But I just feel like Fly could go that way. I really do. When there's three key tall forwards that can really stretch us, that's when we probably do have to play a Charlie Dean and Billy Frampton. So, yeah, it's not ideal. We're going to have to work with it for the remainder, or at least for the first half of the year. We have mid-season spots available, or at least one mid-season spot, with Reef being placed on a long-term injury list. With Ash Johnson, I'm not too sure where we're at with him at the moment as far as what his estimated return to play is. Once we know more about that, we could potentially have two spots on the mid-season draft to pick up a key defender. The other issue with hoping to get lucky in the mid-season draft and get someone from the Samful or the Waffle or the VFL is if we are placed quite high on the ladder, because that's how you get your draft snake, your mid-season draft snake. You base it on the live ladder. So if we are top 8, top 4, we're not going to get first dibs on the best defender in the mid-season draft. So even then, we're probably going to walk out of there with an unders player that isn't the one we were initially hoping for, unless we go real left field and maybe look at, I was going to say Coates Talent League and look for a top ager or an overager or something like that. But are you really bringing in even an overager in the Coates Talent League to come in and ask them to do a job from the get-go? It's just not realistic. It really isn't. So it is a tricky predicament that we're in. The conversation further down the line is, what are we going to do in the postseason? How are we going to work with picking up players there? Let the recruitment team do their job. I guess they've got the delisted free agency, unrestricted free agency, the draft. But once again, that's not going to be an immediate fix. We'll see. That's quite further down the line, but let's catch up on some comments here. Steve-O says, Billy Butterfingers Frampton, time to step up. Last chance to prove yourself within this worth in this side. I 100% agree that it's certainly his last chance. It's unfortunate because last season, Steve-O, he actually played quite well when he first came back into the side early in the year. Had a really good game against St Kilda, had a great game against Carlton, and then there was a point in the year where he got dropped, and then he came in and played forward, and then had nil impact, and then he was thrown back. So I will defend Billy Frampton to the hills when it comes to that. Had Billy Frampton not been moved and we persisted with him in the back line, consistency and continuity at the top level of the game is severely underestimated. And if he was afforded the opportunity to remain in the team over the long course of a period of time, we could be having a different conversation. In 2023, he played a fair bunch of footy. Got dropped later in the year, but he played roles in the ruck. He played well as a defender. Played really well from what I could recall. Maybe he can recapture that. Maybe he can't. George, I feel like Reef was recruited for midfield, but doesn't have a big tank. I don't think he's a backman. He has no run and carry, cannot mark. So initially, he was definitely drafted as a midfielder. The tank query, I'm not too sure. I didn't watch him. I'm not sure how much midfield he played in the VFL in his formative years at the Pies. And you don't think he's a backman. He has no run and carry, cannot mark. Well, the thing is, I think the type of player we're hoping for with Reef is we weren't hoping for a run and carry defender. We're hoping for a defender that can do a job and release the shackles on Darcy Moore. However, he was someone not surprisingly, but he actually does have a bit of run and carry. I saw that a lot in the preseason. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see that in game because he just didn't have the opportunity to do so. Stefanos says, we still didn't conclusively see enough of Reef before making a call. Yeah, that's where we're at. We're at an impetus now with the decision behind whether Reef is going to be a part of the long-term future of the Pies. But at the very least, I could probably see Reef McKinnis getting rookie listed and getting a rookie contract. I think that's probably the most realistic option right now. Right now, our rookie A's are Oleg Markov and Ash Johnson. So I hate to say it, I think Ash Johnson could very well get delisted. There's every chance that Oleg Markov gets delisted at the end of the year. I think there will be space for a Reef McKinnis to at least be on the rookie list. George says he's also not an elite kick out of the back line, but he can be a lockdown only. Yeah, that's the conversation we're having. The priority for the club is for him to be a lockdown player, not necessarily a player to rely on kicking outside of from our D50. Steve-O says, hopefully Reef hits the gym, goes hard, so when he comes back... Hey, good point. Steve, that's a good point. A lot of players, when you are going from season to season, you only have X amount of time to try and build muscle in the off season. During the season, you're not putting on muscle with the amount of running you're doing. You're just trying to maintain. And it's sometimes a bit of an extended period on the sidelines can help you find some extra time in a gym and put in a concerted effort to build some muscle. And Reef is quite slim for his size. So this actually we might look back at this and say this was a blessing in disguise for Reef. He gets a little bit mature head-wise. He goes through adversities off-field with the rehab, and then he gets jacked in the gym. Comes back, puts on, 5 kilos. He can still run well. I think that would be a big win in the long term if that happens. Good point, Steve-O. Yesterday, Andreas, good evening. Go Pies says, Dean Frampton have had too many chances. I would say Billy Frampton has had too many chances. I think he might get another one, as to will Charlie Dean. But, I mean, what other options and solutions or hypotheticals do you have? Andreas from Black and White United says, Billy Frampton is a lock. We have no choice. Has to be him. Yeah, I guess so. Like, horses for courses for the Carlton game. But beyond that, it just depends what their Fly's mindset is. Does he want someone who can do a job straight away and play directly on Harry Mackay, or do you try work Charlie Dean into that conversation? Frampton's not perfect, but he's got height. If Billy's in the side, it can free up Darcy. But if it's Charlie Dean Moore, will be babysitting. I hope we see more of Darcy Moore taking the best forward. He did that pretty much all game against Sam Darcy. Had some good moments, had some bad moments. I thought overall he had a net positive game. So I think as our skipper, as a 6'6" key defender, if you're asked to play one-on-one footy when we need it the most, I think you just got to do it. And I think to build on that game against Sam Darcy, I don't think he's going to play on a better forward than him this year. I think we need Darcy Moore to play one-on-one more than ever. Stefano says, can we say neither and try Checkers? I'm not there yet. I mentioned in the preseason, but it's just unrealistic because Checkers hasn't trained there all preseason. It can happen. It's not out of the possibility. He has experience there, so it's not like it's completely foreign to him like it was Reef McKinnis. So we'll see. We'll see. I don't mind it. You can still have McStay and Membry up forward, and then you got your small forwards feeding. Lockie Schultz is taking marks overhead. Bloody Elliott is taking marks overhead. Bobby Hill is an overhead small forward. Bo McCreary brings you pressure at ground level. If Mason Cox stays in the side, you also have another kick there going forward. You also have Darcy Cameron who can do that. Steve-O says, just need to wait till mid-season draft. Picks up the best backman in the country. Just need Billy till then. The problem there is, Steve-O, is if we're quite high up the ladder, we're not going to have first dibs on the best available defender in the mid-season draft. Unfortunately. Peter G says, our options aren't plentiful, so Frampton really is the only option. It really is. Steve-O says, I want TJ in the side, but not sure if he's 100% ready yet. Watching him in the VFL, he wasn't there yet. He's I would say like just off, and it's the first game of the VFL, so I don't want to make a hyperbole statement, but he's still got some work to do, a bit of work to do. And he wouldn't be coming in for Reef McKinnis to be a key defender. He's a medium-sized defender. He's more like he's somewhere between Isaac Quaynor and Jeremy Howe. That's the type of player he is. George says, people are too harsh on Frampy. Look at Essendon, Mackay, and how average he is. Yeah. I suppose when you consider how much Mackay's on, especially how front-loaded his contract is, you can make that argument, but you can't tell me you'd prefer Billy Frampton over Mackay at your club. William says Dimitir. Dimitir he's playing wing. He played wing yesterday in the VFL. He's not a key defender. Tomlinson, question mark, says Peter. Freddie Kruger says Tomlinson is a dud. There's the contrast in considerations for Adam Tomlinson. I suppose, I mean, let me see. Where is Adam Tomlinson playing anywhere at the moment? Let's check. Adam Tomlinson 2025. I know there was an article about him potentially going to the Waffle. He's actually playing for North Melbourne's VFL side. Okay. So let's see how, I mean, it's not the best option, but it's one of our few options. How did old mate Tomlinson go in the VFL yesterday? So let's have a look. He had 20. Oh, sorry. 1 second. Show me all the stats. So Tomlinson had 24 disposals, 4 inside 50s, 8 intercept possessions, 0 contested marks, 1 score involvement, 3 tackles. And who did they play? That's important. Like, was it a blowout or what was it? VFL. North Melbourne. Oh, no, that's the AFL game. VFL. All matches. Collingwood playing next week in the VFL, or they got a bye as well? They've got a bye. Okay. So North Melbourne drew with the Casey Demons. Okay. There you go. So look, if I'm sure he'd be willing to put his hand up, Adam Tomlinson, for another AFL opportunity in Victoria. I don't think he was willing to go to Perth because of his family, the way they're situated at the moment. I think he's got kids as well. So we'll keep an earmark on Adam Tomlinson. there's a few players we can just watch quietly while the lads go about it throughout the first half of the year. John Caxos said, Framps is our only big body defender. Dean is more a mid-size who can intercept. Framps is obvious choice for the Blues. The week after, they may look at Dean for a period. That's what I think. I think there's a world where Frampton gets the immediate opportunity against Carlton. We see how he goes there. And if it's not good enough, then Charlie Dean comes along. If Billy Frampton performs well, you keep him in and you give him 4 or 5 games just to try to find his feet and work his way into the side. What other option do we have? Yeah, Mark, Frampton didn't play great in the VFL. Mark Quigley says, Leak Aaliyah wants out of GWS. Unfortunately, that's a postseason conversation, unfortunately. He's not exactly proven in the AFL environment just yet, Leak Aaliyah. He's had some good moments. He had that great game. I think it was against Geelong last year. But outside of that, he's been starved of opportunities. But at the same time, he's up against some dogged competition at GWS. You've got Sam Taylor, Buckley, you've got Connor Iden, you've got Connor Stone, who's thriving at the moment as well. Yeah, they're pretty stacked in the back line as well. His first half was solid. Yeah, Frampton got moved forward before he got dropped. Frampton, the defender for the defender. Annoyed Grassy Mountain says, could they put Dan McStay in the back line and leave Mason Cox in the forward line? Maybe not McStay, potentially. McStay does have stints in the game when the Lions were under the pump. I think it's happened a couple of times for Collingwood where when you got 5 minutes left in the quarter, you just throw them back to play a roaming role as a +1. So they have 5 forwards, forward of center, but then they've got a +1 as that defender, and that roaming defender is a Dan McStay. I'm not sure how he would go as a full-time forward defender, but you have to explore all consideration in this situation. We are in dire straits right now with our stocks in the back line, so we really have to turn over every page and see what's possible, what works, what can we do. Because Mason Cox can do a job in a forward line and rotate with DC as a ruckman. I think they work very well. I thought Mason Cox was good. Against Footscray. Took some time to work into it in the first half. As you would, he had an injury. He came back late last year, so the continuity isn't there yet. But he had some big moments, a couple good contested marks, that beautiful through ball to Bobby Hill, which got us a very important goal in the moment of the game. So we'll see. Hawks Hour, Ben, either that or play Myercheck at fullback and cap Charlie West. I'm actually going to talk about the draftees in a little while, but they were very impressive yesterday against Sydney, and Charlie West did not look out of place. He was unbothered at VFL level. I'll tell you that much. We need to back our younger players. We don't have a lot to invest in at the moment, says Steve-O. I mean, like when we're talking about the key defender role, what other young defenders do we have? Peter G asks, by the time Reef gets back, would we still want to use him as a defender, as we may trade in or draft a key back? Yeah, that is something that could happen in the offseason. We could get someone from the delisted free agency. We could make a trade. We could get someone from the mid-season draft. But I don't think there's any other position available that hasn't been tried for Reef McKinnis yet. I think we're hoping to succeed with rolling the dice and playing Reef McKinnis in the back line, Peter. Radioactive says, can we buy Charlie Comben from North next year? Let's have a look when he's out of contract. If I'm not mistaken, he extended his contract last year. Let's have a look. Out of contract, AFL. Let's have a look. Okay. If we go to North Melbourne, North, the shin boners. Anyone here? No, so he's got a contract to at least next year. What about North? Charlie Comben. I'm not seeing it. He might have a couple of years on his contract. I'll tell you what. Charlie Comben is contracted until, drum roll. Come on, give me something. Restricted free agent at the end of 2027. So he's someone we can go for. But yeah, we'd have to force a trade and we'd have to get him a couple years away from his contract actually ending, which does make it a little bit more difficult. I would also argue, if we're being realistic about this, Charlie Comben is a big part or a big piece in North Melbourne going forward. He's only 23 years old and he had a really good year last year. I think North would be silly to let someone go like a Charlie Comben. But yeah, he's out of contract in 2 years. Andreas said, here's one. Mason Cox at fullback. Just stick on the key forward like glue. Will win more than 50-50 overhead battles. I just got this thing with Mason down back. He'd be better than Ben Mackay. Mate, that is... I love you, man, but that's a shocking recommendation. Mason Cox as a defender will be a dead set liability when the ball hits the deck, and he's not fast enough because you have to remember the game is not played in the clutches of the contest all the time. A lot of goals that we get are from transition footy. A lot of goals you get, in footy are in transition. So you're asking Mason Cox to run back, face the goal with Aaron Norton steaming ahead, Sam Darcy, Kerno. Like, he's just not going to be able to keep up with them. Yeah, when the ball comes in high, long, and slow, he will be the best defender in the league. But he can do that as a ruckman anyways. So you get the best of both worlds by having him in a ruck, rolling down back. Darcy Cameron does it very well. He did that exceptionally well against the Bulldogs, had a couple of crucial marks in that game in our back half. Ethan Phillips, is he from North as well? I'm not too sure. I haven't seen enough from him. Up to Simon. What's Simon Prestigier Kermo doing these days? Peter Onion says Ollie Markov or TJ, not a key defender. Neither of them. Who is the best back on the market this year? Asked Ben. There's not a lot. I've had a look at this a few times. There's not a lot. If anything. I'll have a look again, but there's nothing at the moment. Peter G says McStay started his career at Brisbane as a centre half back. Interesting. How long was he played there though? Was it a season or two? Comben isn't a lockdown defender, says Ben. Fair call. I think you can always try and turn one into it. Rick says West is our future mini John O'Brien. Frampton has to get first crack, especially on the monsters. Ned Long, no, doesn't have the traits to be a key defender. Either Turnstein or Big Roo into the defenders, just lacking a bit of agility. Winning the ground ball is so important these days. And if you have Oscar Steen or Big Roo in your backline, Hawthorn are going to have an absolute field day walking out of their backline against us. John says, rather than some of these bizarre suggestions, how about we leave our best players in their best positions and bring the next spare defender on our list? I think that's what we're doing, John. I think we're talking about the likes of Charlie Dean and Billy Frampton. If you've been here from the start of the stream, we're talking Billy Frampton and Charlie Dean. So he played there in his first season or two at Brisbane. Interesting. That would have been some time ago because he's 30 years old now. So, yeah. I mean, he can do it. It's an option. Let's move on to the next subject for the show, and that's Ed Allen. Now, a lot of you would have seen his goal if you're on Instagram or following the VFL briefly, vaguely. He was definitely best on ground. He had 31 touches. He had 13 contested possessions. He had a goal. 33% of his possessions were a part of or were in the chain of a scoring involvement. So he looks great in the VFL at the moment, right? Of course, he's probably a level above VFL, but watching the game, he reminds me of McRae in the contest, Finn McRae. He doesn't have the burst to break out of the contest, which means a lot of his kicks are just thrown onto the boot. If we look at the handball to kick ratio, 31 touches yesterday, he had 21 of them were handballs. So to me, he handballs the ball a lot, and that is attributed to some portion because he can't break speed and he can't break out of the contest because it just doesn't have it in him. So he handballs not because it's the best option, but it's because that's all he can really do in those situations. He can get caught up to very easily. So that was present at VFL level. We've seen it at AFL level. He's got a bunch of potential. I know I mentioned him and Finlay McRae in the same breath, but I definitely think Ed Allen has more X factor potential with his size to be a Patrick Cripps type of midfielder. He's just not there yet. And with our midfield mix right now, I think we have a really good balance. I don't know when we see Ed Allen next, if I'm being brutally honest. I'm actually not too sure if at what point he will feature. He wasn't horrible against GWS, but suggestions were made that his running off cameras was deplorable. His two-way running, which is a big thing for any AFL team these days. So if Ed Allen's not ticking those boxes and he's not able to kick the ball well, you need people who can kick the ball very well on every line, in the midfield, in the forward line, in the back line. And if Ed Allen's not up to scratch there, maybe it's just not something the selection panel are willing to risk at the moment. Maybe they want another season in Ed Allen in the VFL. I don't know. I really don't know. It's a tough one. He had some really nice work close in the stoppages. Had that really nice goal from a stoppage contest. But even just watching it and listening to speaking to people in the chat, they were seeing the same things that I was seeing. So it's with the VFL, you have to be careful with the stats and all the hype around players getting 30 touches and kicking 2 goals a game because you don't see everything else within that. You just see the numbers and you say, oh, why can't he play? He's 30 touches in the VFL. He's kicking goals. You want a midfielder who can kick goals. Of course you do. But if you watch the game, he's not breaking out of the contest like you want him to. His kicking is not elite. It's very average. They're floaters. And it's just, I'm being hypercritical of the man, but the reason why I'm doing that is because we have to compare him up against the likes of Scott Pendlebury. We're comparing him against Steele Sidebottom, Nick Dacos, Geordie DeGoey. He doesn't have the defensive presence that Ned Long has. Harry Perryman. He's just not there. So that's why I genuinely think we're probably going to see Ed Allen in the VFL for a little bit longer, unless there's an injury, knock on wood. Unless someone's out of form, knock on wood. We don't want that either. We want everyone in form, It's a good problem to have at the very least. And it's not all doom and gloom for Ed Allen. I'm just saying maybe Steady Eddie doesn't come in sooner than what we had first thought. And I was saying that in the off-season and pre-season after that game against Melbourne. I think it's important not to overhype these players. They have one good game, but his first game against Fremantle in the AFL side wasn't good. And then he comes and plays against the D's, which was essentially an open training session. It was. They were witches' hats on the field that day. They had nothing to play for. We were trying to kick 200 points to make finals on percentage. So when you play against the top sides like GWS and Footscray are going to be a great side. Who else have we played? Port Adelaide. You have to compare him up against those that caliber of midfielder, and he's not a winger. Maybe the lads or the coaches were playing him predominantly as a winger last year in the VFL to give him time and space to dispose the ball and be comfortable using the ball on the outside, learning how to run and carry if that's even possible. So those are the things that I ponder with Ed Allen. Let me capture out to some of these comments again. Hazza says, what are your thoughts on what Brazzy's going to do next year? I think he leaves. It's a big contract. It's big money. But if he stays, is a legend. That just proves that there are still players in the modern game that want to be one club players for their entire career. Pies 23-24 says he'll come back in Allen. I think he'll be good. Allen is quick. Allen was quick in the draft combine. He had one of the highest 20-meter sprints, but the irony in that is we're not seeing that in game. I don't know why my thought process behind that is I think even though Ed Allen has great sprint speed, his acceleration isn't there. So the time it takes him to get to his top level sprint takes too long in the clutches of the game. That's the problem, I think. He doesn't have the acceleration. It takes him a long time. Once he gets going, that's a different conversation. But in the midfield, you don't have that time. You don't have that time, especially when you're up against Chad Warner, prime Patrick Dangerfield, Isaac Heaney, Connor Rosie, who are coming up against Carlton. Carlton, they're all slow, so they're not really an issue in the midfield when it comes to their speed. Brisbane, you got players in there who can burst out of the pack. Maybe not as much as. I'm trying to think of a good example. I'm thinking Brisbane, Sydney, Port, GWS, Finn Callaghan. Look at that. Can't keep up with that. Pies 23-24 says Cripper's disposal isn't great as well. So I think Allen needs to build a tank. He does. He does need to build a tank. Thing is, I mentioned Patrick Cripps' name when I'm drawing comparisons with Ed Allen, but I'm sure by the time Patrick Cripps was 21, he was already a freak in the competition or a very, very high quality midfielder. So just take it with a grain of salt when I do mention those two names in the same sentence. Doesn't mean I think Ed Allen could be a Patrick Cripps. I don't think that's the case, at least. It's too early to tell, but if I had to bet on it, I don't think Ed Allen will be anywhere near to the quality of Patrick Cripps. Yeah, Patrick Cripps isn't fast and doesn't break out of a contest, but he's an absolute weapon. He's literally the best contested player in the game behind Matty Rao. And he can kick goals. Or I mean, maybe not. Maybe I take that back. He's had goal kicking seasons, but I don't think Ed Allen has that. Rick, yeah, I just brought that up. I don't know where Allen's speed has gone. He had the fastest combine time over 20 meters. Yeah, it's the sprint speed versus the acceleration. I think the acceleration is an important conversation and an important piece to your ability to break out of a contest. Pendle's handballed a lot in the Friday game, but did you see the quality of his handballs? Did you see how he was able to dance out of some of the contests without even breaking a sweat? Ed Allen cannot do that. You can't make that. You can't bring me that reason. John Caxor says, Falk in a row. Do we go Allen next in or will Hoskin Elliott? So Hoskin Elliott he played mainly forward in the VFL. I don't think either of them are in line next. To be honest. We'll need Frampton against Kerno Mackay, Team Mello. I think that seems like the most obvious option. Peter G says, I feel if Allen doesn't get much senior footy this season, he'll be in Western Australia next year. Like in the waffle, or like for you to go to Perth and play AFL, you still got to be a good player. If you get delisted or if you want to trade out, I don't even think right now, I don't even think a team would offer up a trade for someone like Ed Allen. They'd just get him as a delisted free agent, to be honest. So yeah, he's got a bit to prove before he can start asking for trades and picks in exchange and one. I don't know what his contract is. I think he's a non-free agent. So when's he out? When is Ed Allen out of contract? Actually, that'd be a good question to answer. Let's see. Okay, Collingwood. Where are you, fella? Ed Allen is out of contract at the end of next year. So he could potentially ask for a trade at the end of this season. We could get a trade. But I think no one will want him at this point in time. I think he will play out his contract. He's still got a point to prove. So while you're still at an AFL club, don't try to rock the ship and ask for a trade. You're not gonna get it anyways. I don't think that's a reality scenario. Steve-O said, like I said last week, the way Hawthorn's game plan is, it's the future of the AFL. Need to be able to kick, run, and hit. Exactly. And I just don't think Ed Allen does that just yet. Tim Kyle says Cochrane was fantastic yesterday in the VFL. He's a long-term replacement, but the two right now in the ones will be Checkers and Frampton for consideration. The backline. Yeah, Joel Cochrane's going to be a part of the next piece of this this show. So let's keep it moving. Give me 1 second. Yeah, Ed he's still pretty young. He was drafted in 2021, so he would be 19 in 2022, 20 in 2023. Yeah, he's 22 this year. So the draftees yesterday, Joel Cochrane had 15 touches, 5 intercept possessions. He was quite slow. He got off to a slow start and was a little bit fumbly at ground level and in the air. But he showed great character in bouncing back in the second half and actually was one of our better players, one of our best players in that second half. I thought he was everywhere. He's a great endurance player as well. He's got like a 6:05 2-kilometer record at the moment. I think he was one of, if not the fastest players in the draft combine at the end of last year. And that really showed in the second half. And he just grew into the game. He grew into the game. He was good at breaking lines. He used the ball well. Couple intercept marks. He dropped a couple early and he bounced back. And that's a really good sign of resilience and persistence in your first game, albeit in the VFL. You take that with both hands as a great bulk of confidence going into your next stretch of games. They've got the bye as well this week, so they won't be playing. But he was really good. Like, genuinely had a really strong impact on the game. And throughout the preseason, we probably had the most question marks around Joel Cochrane, just because he was nursing a rib injury, and then when he was out in the park, you didn't really notice him a great deal. But now we're going to see him under the spotlight in the VFL, and it's a big tick for Joel Cochrane. I'd probably give Joel Cochrane like a 7.5 out of 10 yesterday. Will Hayes had 15 touches, 3 inside 50s. He had a goal. I'm not sure if he had a goal assist. The VFL don't tell us that. But he just did not look out of place in any way. He has everything in his game to be another Bobby Hill for us, barring the aerial presence that Bobby Hill has. However, I noticed that Will Hayes was playing a bit higher as a small forward, whereas Bobby Hill is the more deeper small forward at times. Yes, he comes up to the stoppage at times, but I think Bobby Hill and Jamie Elliott are our deeper small forwards, and then Bo and Lockie play higher up. But I think he could be one of those high half forwards who actually finds the ball a little bit more in the build-up. So really a really positive game for Will Hayes. I think he was also a solid 7.5. Just he looks unbothered. He doesn't look like he's stressed out. He's just chill dude. Charlie West, wow. In the first half, he had, how many touches did he have? He had 9 touches, 2 goals, 2 contested marks. The game wasn't really near him for the most part of the first half, but that was due to our horrible delivery inside 50, which actually kept the Swans in the game for at least 3 quarters. But what was pleasing to see was his competitiveness in all facets of the game. It just stuck out like a sore thumb. He was tackling hard. He was competing when the ball hit the deck. 2 contested marks in your first VFL game at senior level is a really nice feather in your cap that you can walk away with. So yeah, he's just a bit of a battering ram. It's weird, guys, on screen and even watching him at training, he doesn't look like he's 6'4", but that's what he's listed as. He looks like he's 6'2" because of how stocky he is. Similar to like Dane Swan, you wouldn't know Dane Swan is 6'2", but because he's so stocky, it sort of like makes him look shorter than what he actually is. So ticks all across the ground for the draftees. Charlie West, Will Hayes, Joel Cochrane. I think I'd probably give them all a 7.5, a solid 7.5, which is a great return. And who knows, we might need one of these players further down the line in the season. You just don't know what can happen. That is the beauty of sport. Injuries, form, so on and so forth. So, yeah, really good return on those lads there. What else are we saying? Yeah, Riley Mason was good in his debut game for the VFL. Angus Sievers, I think it was, who's like another big key defender. So depending how he goes in the VFL, I don't want to say it, but it's on my mind now. But depending how well he goes, I'm sure Collingwood will have a look at him. But he's a big, solid boy, and he played reasonably well yesterday. Riley Mason had 3 goals, looked solid. Big boy as well, another key forward. So there are some key position players VFL listed that are really going to try to put their best foot forward and get an opportunity. They're quite young, and in a game where there was 15 AFL listed players, there were very few VFL listed players there. So these are the players that I think the VFL side and the AFL side fancy the most, which is why they got their opportunity yesterday. So that's it. But anyways, guys, we'll leave it at that. I thank you all for joining me on this Sunday evening. We'll probably be back for a Pies presser tomorrow. This week will be a bit of an unusual one because of the bye. Just throws a bit of a spanner in the works. But as always, thank you for being here. And until next time, go Pies.